Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're watching us from. Welcome to today's edition of LaToken VCTV. And today, Wednesday, the 3rd of March, we have a panel to discuss a very interesting and insightful topic based on the current era we are living in, the post pandemic era. And today, interestingly enough, we have three panelists from three different continents to give three different views, opinions, and we will be taking their expert insights, lessons learned, and we'll be discussing what are the takeaways post pandemic and the future of cities post COVID 19. So we have our guests here, no, not even from three continents, from four continents. So, first of all, I will try and give a brief about the topic, and I welcome our audience watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube to be a part of this show. They can easily write, comment, or have questions that can be answered by posting them on the comment section of whichever social media they are watching from. And also, this is an opportunity for entrepreneurs, startups out there to get with the program and get with presenting their pitches in front of a panel like we have today. So if you have a bright idea, you have a startup or a business that you feel needs exposure funding, this is an opportunity to get your product out there in front of the whole world and in front of our panelists. You just never know, you might get the attention you are looking for. So, concerning our topic for today, cities around the world have faced the brunt of the COVID 19 pandemic due to the widespread international connectivity. The movement of people and goods and commercial and recreational activities have been affected. Now, denser cities have proven to be easy targets. However, density by itself doesn't need to be a vulnerability. While we have cities like Mumbai, New York, and London have reported staggering infection rates, other dense cities like Singapore, Seoul, and Hong Kong have managed to keep the worst of the virus at bay. So, going forward now, what are the takeaways for cities, especially knowing fully well that most cities focus on being economic or commercial hubs. Now we have concepts of healthy cities, green cities, rising cities, and inclusive cities. So today, our panelists will be joining me to discuss this topic and giving their expert insights. And I'd like to start to the guests to introduce themselves. I would like to start from Kweku. Give us a brief about yourself, what you do, and any other insights.
No, thank you very much, Nathaniel. And again, pleasure to be on LaToken VCTV as well today with these esteemed panelists. My name is Kweku Essien, and I serve as a partner for Mansa Capital, which is an advisory firm based an advisory firm which works with African startups pre-Series A and above to assist them with their strategy and capital raise. As well, I'm an investor as well in some companies, and one would be very useful for this conversation here, which is a property technology platform called Seso Global, which essentially is creating an ecosystem within Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa for now, but we'll soon be moving into various countries in the emerging world. And really what we do is we partner with property developers, banks, law firms to really create a trusted ecosystem where transactions are also logged on the blockchain. And so real pleasure to be here with you. And I think we'll have a great discussion moving forward.
Awesome. We definitely will have a great discussion. And next, Dr. Shrikant, please give us the audience an introduction about yourself, what you do, and any insights.
Yes, I'm Dr. Shrikant Pathasarthi, and It's a pleasure to be in the 4 o'clock slot of India time and 10:30 UK time. India has been balancing, or has had a very wide vision of smart cities by 2030, and this is a very relevant topic that we're going to be discussing today. I'm a startup advisor. I'm a M&A advisor, and I have worked on 30 deals till date, accumulating $300 million in transaction. So we'll talk more as we flow.
Awesome. We will. We definitely will. Thank you for that, Dr. Shrikant. Next, um, Fabio, give us a brief intro about yourself, what you do, and your background.
I am, by training, an economist. I have a PhD from the University of Chicago, and one of my fields at the University of Chicago was urban economics, so that's why I'm here today. But I worked during my career in international institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank. Then I moved to the private sector, worked for Goldman Sachs in London, and then I moved to the Middle East, to the Arabian Peninsula, to work for sovereign wealth funds. I was for 8 years the chief strategy officer of the Oman Investment Fund. Now I'm a partner of an investment bank which advises innovative companies to raise capital.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Fabio. And then last but not least, we go on to Gary. Gary,
Great.
welcome.
Great to be here. Great to see some friends, and it's 5:30 in the morning here, and I'm on the East Coast of the U.S. right now, but it's great to be here. So my name is Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. I love artificial intelligence and quantum. I've worked on 17 companies, 2 unicorns on the original management team of Click Software, sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion. And also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded a little less than 5 years ago. It's unbelievable that time's flying so fast. So 2 years ago, I co-founded GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio. And we curate companies from all over the world using Silicon Valley as a port to get the valuations up, to help them organizationally and operationally, to help them develop into a unicorn. And it's funny because a unicorn is a mythical creature that doesn't exist. Our thing is to make unicorns real. So it's great to be here today.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that, Gary. And I guess I'd like to start my questions from Dr. Shrikant. And I'd like to find out from you your opinion, being that you're in Asia, you're in India, one of the most populous cities and countries in the world. What are your takeaways from the COVID pandemic experience? And what would you like to see in as the first evolution for cities going forward? I mean, what do you think is the first takeaway from this post-pandemic era?
So let me contextualize my response to this more aligned to the topic that we're discussing, which is the cities of the future post COVID.
Yes.
And I'd like to add, or I would like to hear from Dr. Fabio in this particular regard, because typically when a pandemic hurts or when the growth dips, the government tries to start spending on infrastructure. And if you see the government spending, which has been, or the budget spending, which has been announced in bits and pieces, has been one on maritime, which has been funded about $30 billion by the government of India to develop maritime sector. And two, the joining of AIIB, the Asia Infrastructure and Investment Bank, to seek a loan from them to develop the cities for the future. So I believe so. Infrastructure creates jobs, and jobs create wealth. Is the I would say the idealist perspective of an economist, so to speak. So my key takeaway from this is acceleration of this particular strategy. So what was put off till 2030 kind of got accelerated to 2025, and what was put off to 2025 got accelerated to 2022. So acceleration is something that I'm seeing from the government as well as private sector, so to speak, from Asia at least.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Acceleration of development, of acceleration of infrastructure spending, which should bring economic wealth to the public. Do you agree, Mr. Fabio? What do you think cities of the future should be more concerned about?
I I agree in part because infrastructure, like any other venture, like any other investment, requires a cost-benefit analysis. Not all infrastructure are useful. Not all infrastructure have a net present value. In other words, not all infrastructure repay the cost of building. That's why when a government, a local authority, or a private company invests in infrastructure that might be physical or sometimes it might be software. No, for example, the digitalization of the public services. It needs to be based on a careful examination of costs and benefits. There is another issue here, that when you build a physical infrastructure, say a road, a highway, a railroad, you definitely boost economic activity for some time. Then, when the infrastructure is completed, you have construction companies that don't have any other thing to build, and workers who have been employed in the construction of the infrastructure who are unemployed. So it's not boosting for a few years the infrastructure construction is not healthy, because it artificially boosts the investments or GDP, but then leaves, when the work is completed, leaves unused capacity. So the real issue is to plan in order to make sure that you have a flow of infrastructure and maintenance of infrastructure. Maintenance is extremely important. A lot of politicians like to cut ribbons to inaugurate, some new road or some new development, and then they forget that they need to allocate a budget for the maintenance of that infrastructure. So the main issue here is not to use infrastructure as a quick fix for economic woes. It is to plan a long term, which means 20, 30 year, over a 20, 30 year horizon, what a country, a city, an economy needs. For example, we have a great example, which I witnessed firsthand, is Dubai. Dubai has planned for years how they wanted to be 20 years down the road, and they have implemented that plan very efficiently. And now Dubai is one of the great cities in the world. I lived there for more than 2 years. and has first-class infrastructure, is a place where people go to work and live from all over the world. So that can be taken as a very positive example of how you boost development through a long-term infrastructural project plan.
Obviously, yeah. Obviously, the city of Dubai has, from what I study, they have a plan to shift from tourism-based society to more of a green city and a sustainable city. So obviously, this is not just a 2-year or 5-year plan. This is obviously a decade-long plan and will last for decades to come. So it's important to, like you said, measure the cost benefit analysis, understand where they are going to in the future, and plan accordingly. So, Gary, what's your insights? I mean, what do cities of the future have to put in place, knowing where you come from in the Americas? What are the vital things to look forward to?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the challenges that we've had during this pandemic. I mean, you got cities like Mumbai, New York, London that have not fared very well during this pandemic. But then you've got Singapore, Seoul, Hong Kong that really served well. So, what are some of the issues? I mean, in the States, we've got the lack of open places. Look at the resource management. It's been terrible during this pandemic. Look at New York, for instance. Here we got one of the most sophisticated cities in the world that the infrastructure completely broke down. And also look at energy consumption. We didn't expect that people would be staying home this much. So the grid that should have been updated years ago showed the holes. The telecommunications infrastructure that should have been upgraded showed the hole. And at the same time, if we look at it, if there was a study done that said that 284 cities in Hong Kong had far fewer challenges with COVID per 10,000 population. Why? Because they had some of these infrastructural pieces put out. At the same time, we look at the challenges that cities like New York had, and we had a lack of coordinated resources. Right? It was like a herding cats. We have to really look at how urban health infrastructure is implemented. We need to look at how we have, it's simple things. It's open places. A city, densely populated. Of course, there's Central Park in New York City, and San Francisco's got a lot of open places. But we got to really think about how do we maintain challenges like the social distancing. At the same time, the very idea of a city is to really put people congested into one place. So it's been an eye-opening experience, and yet at the same time, I'm really hopeful because we understand things like the supply chain. I mean, we couldn't even get a roll of toilet paper, right? And in some places, still the case. So how does cities support that? How do we use technologies like AI and the Internet of Things to be able to help us get better? And how do we, on the other side of it, how can cities support, the infrastructure from a mental health standpoint? I mean, it's been taxing over the last year, although there's a lot of bright lights because of the vaccine here and the reduction in the number of cases. So the bright lights, but why didn't we anticipate this further? The good news is that we've learned some valuable lessons very, very quickly. We did come out with the drugs. The infrastructure finally got forced in some ways because of presidential orders to do things, and so it's hopeful. But you've got some of the most advanced cities in the world, like I said, Mumbai, New York, and London. Had some of the highest per capita infection rates. So why and how do we make it better?
Thank you very much for that, Gary. I'll switch over to Kweku quickly. You're in Ghana and you understand how the African continent works. And I'd like your insights to understand what do cities in Africa have to look forward to in the future. What are the things that they need to prioritize in order to be relevant and stay prepared just in case?
No, sure, and it's actually a real pleasure listening to everybody before this. With respect to Ghana in particular, I think that the government did do a good job handling sort of COVID here to an extent. But when you think about some of the density issues, the slums and shanties out there, you do think that maybe we are a little lucky as well to have dodged something here that could have been quite devastating as well, right? With respect to, I mean, in same in most African countries, what happened was there are different famines that happened. Lots of people then decided to move into the capital. That led to an influx of people, no real housing available as well. 4 or 5 people living in a room. You find that these can become very, very big issues in the future. And COVID has just been an eye opener for a lot of people in government and private sector, understanding that infrastructure obviously needs to be built at the higher level. Power, which Ghana does a good enough job, obviously could be way better. And then as well, perhaps as well, internet connectivity. What you found was that a lot of folks now are working from home. A lot of folks are realizing now that they can work from home. Your job doesn't necessarily require you to go to work, which would then obviously provide you with touch points to get infections as well. Ghana is lucky to have sun, as you can see behind me, as well, which allows more people to sort of obviously be in the open air and sort of enjoy at least the environment. But even with respect to that, that has to be elevated to a much higher level. We talked about Dubai. I've been to Singapore, which I think is maybe my favorite looking city at the very least in terms of how green it is, how nature is involved highly with respect to all the planning for the city as well. The other aspect that is happening here with respect to Ghana and Africa in general is private developers are buying large swaths of land and then planning those cities out. We talked about there's Echo Atlantic in Lagos, which is a dredged up Dubai style island just off coast of Lagos. There are major developers here in Africa like Randever who are building out planned cities, LMI Holdings who are building out planned cities where industry will be sort of incorporated there. And obviously, there'll be residential units as well with other amenities, hospitals, schools within that as well. That obviously reduces travel as well. Potentially, people could walk and bike to work as well, which is much healthier than you would sort of than what is being done here right now, right? And as well, move out the density from the city as well, right? And so internet connectivity will help with that as well. Nomads, people being able to work outside of the city, outside of the city center, but as well, obviously moving industry, real industry as well, will help push that out as well. And there are a lot of folks sort of working on this as well, but obviously a lot more work that needs to be done.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Kweku. And I'll come back to you right now, Kweku. You're in Africa, you're in Ghana, and you understand that apart from just being economically active and finding means to stay commercially relevant, which other sectors do you feel need attention or deserve attention? Because if you ask me off the top of my head, I'm in Nigeria, and I understand that our healthcare system, like you said, we dodged a bullet during this crisis, but our healthcare system needs serious help. Now, I know significant investment is being spent on green cities, sustainable cities, and projects like that. But are these the basic things that we need to be concerned about as a people, as a government, as entrepreneurs? Do we look at more into green cities, more into healthcare, more into providing for the underprivileged, and this is just putting Africa as a unique case study. It's different from other continents that are represented here. what exactly do you think we should focus on in Africa?
Oh, I mean, that's a great question. Well, there are a lot of things, as you know, Nathaniel, that we should be focusing on over here. The needs are obviously quite a bit, but obviously, what we found during this time was that we obviously don't have sort of the hospital infrastructure. Again, as you mentioned, we dodged a real bullet here. There was some. Obviously, the governments are now accelerating that effort, and even there's some private sector help within that aspect as well to build out the infrastructure for this as well. Again, outside of maybe the city center as well, and to different areas as well. And what you require for that, obviously, with everything else, economics are involved in this, and so people need to understand, where the densities are, where the densities are, where do I need to build this to be able to make my ROI as well, even with a hospital as well. And what you find is that the data isn't really out there, and
Available.
so with the company I mentioned, Setso Global, which I'm involved in, really one of the aspects we're looking to do here is really to build out the database with respect to where people are living, where people are, and with that you can better plan, where do I build a road, where do I build a hospital, where do I build a school, right? Because I mean, with Natalia, we all know where, with respect to the continent, there's a lot we need. But what we shouldn't just build ad hoc because we need anything. We should build it very systematically, very strategically, and understand where it's needed and build it there, and then obviously then provide the management that is required.
Totally agree with you, Kweku. I mean, going forward for many African cities, I think it's important to collect enough data, and this data will be responsible for planning out long term what needs to be done, what needs to be implemented. Dr. Shrikant, over to you. What your understanding of the environment in Asia and India? I want to ask you, what do you think, apart from infrastructure, is relevant to be implemented for cities to be relevant in the future? I know that infrastructure is key for you, but do you think that with the dense population you have, especially in India, there's need to highlight other sectors?
There is obviously, when you're talking about a dense country like India, which has got more population per square inch, but you have to understand that there are multiple aspects that emerge, right? Smart cities is one aspect. Smart cities is often or misunderstood with green cities, which is not the case. A smart city is different from a green city. And while sustainable growth and sustainable cities is something that the government slash the developed economies aim for, we here in the developing economies we aim for a smart city, and then we can parallel that with a green city, so to speak. So if you move down south in Kerala or the southern part of India, you will find solar farms. So there's a lot of activity happening, or there are a lot of innovation happening around solar energy, renewable energy, and that impacting the growth of a particular city. So the contours of the city is actually being built on the innovation which is being produced in that particular city. For example, if you're talking about Bangalore, where I'm residing, where I'm domiciled right now, it is like the Israel of it's like the Tel Aviv of the world, right? We have fintech, we have legal tech, we have anything tech which is arising from domiciled in this particular region as such. So that has got a lot of relevance in the development of the region as well. So I think infrastructure is one part of it. The significant other part is the government's willingness and ableness to support innovation which is coming out from a particular city.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I thank you for mentioning the fact that government has a role to play, because government can support this innovation by policies and by different other means, but they have a significant role to play in planning the long-term future of a particular city or region. And Fabio, I'll come to you next. Fabio, you're in Europe, you're in Italy, and you are much more advanced in terms of development um, when it comes to these issues. I'd like to understand from you the city of the future in Europe. Apart from understanding cost benefit analysis, what else do you think is relevant to be prepared and to plan for the future?
You see, the cities were created as an agglomeration of economic activity and as a way to enlarge the market. We know from the very first chapter of The Wealth of Nations that the extent of the market, the dimension of the market, is related to the efficiency of the system, of the economic system. So we live in cities because we have the opportunity of meeting people, of selling to our services or good to a lot of people. And we have the chance of finding what we need compared to the situation in a small village or in an isolated farm in the middle of nowhere. Now, this agglomeration, the benefits of agglomerations are weakening because with connectivity, with internet connectivity, you don't need to be physically in the same place. And this conversation, this event, is an example of the world to come. We are from 4 different continents. We're talking, we're interacting. We could be doing business. We don't need to be in the same place. So the city of the 21st century will need to be reshaped along this new concept of connectivity. It will be more important to have good fiber optic network than to have, for example, a good bus system. It will be more important to have a public sector which provides online services rather than having a means of transportation to go physically into a public building. And so in that sense, the amenities of a city, which so far have been mostly in terms of networking and connectivity, will give rise to other form of benefits. For example, the possibility of having a better quality of life, better health services, maybe cultural events, cultural institutions such as theater, opera, and so on and so forth. And therefore, the cities which will flourish will be not so much the cities where economic activities will be thriving, because probably that can be achieved even for people who live in a smaller town, but it will hinge on the provision of sophisticated services to individual, to the residents, and to maybe tourists or people who occasionally come in town for their businesses or for their entertainment.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that insight, Fabio. Very, very deep. And I understand that because Europe is a much more advanced society than we have in Africa and Asia and some parts of Asia. What you mentioned right there about focusing on providing sophisticated services, I am certain Gary would align with this because he is a proponent that as we increase in technologies, we get more data, and this data needs to be processed at a faster rate. So, for your own opinion, Fabio, cities will have to focus more on providing more connectivity, faster internet, more sophisticated services, and I'm sure when it comes to faster internet, the current launch of the Starlink satellites by SpaceX is just one direction to make sure that internet connectivity is easily accessible and widespread. Gary, now your own take. What cities of the future? I mean, do you concur with Fabio?
Well, of course, I can concur with my friend.
Thank you.
University of Chicago. No. So I mean, think about it. The democratization of opportunities. In the late 1800s, early 1900, Nikola Tesla talked about the wireless transmission of power and how it would democratize opportunities. Well, think about what's happening during the pandemic. We've had to digitally transform. 2 years ago, if you looked at McKinsey, they said that 92% of the companies would go through digital transformation in the next 10 years. Well, think about what had to happen. We had to move a whole lot faster than ever before. Cities, the democratization opportunities. Look at where we are today, across continents, across the world. So cities are going to have to really develop their digital infrastructure if they want to compete in this new world order. There's going to be a hybrid model, the hybrid model about the digital presence and the model about the physical presence. The companies are going to be the keystones, the cornerstones of opportunity for the future are the ones that are going to embrace it. So what does that mean? That means building your physical and social infrastructure. Understanding, for instance, one of the companies, I'm going to be speaking at Stanford University to the alumni of the Graduate School of Business next week. And one of the technologies that I'll be involved in is a technology that actually allows you to physically create an exact webinar, an exact setting as you would in a university. For instance, if you go into a hall, you have a professor in the front, you've got people in the back. Well, actually taking your avatar, showing you sitting in the seat, and the professor or the speaker in front of you, and set up so it physically looks like that building. Now imagine that. So it doesn't matter where you are. And if you get up, it shows that you're getting up. I mean, you physically shows you getting out of your seat, right? And you can have a virtual drink, if it's a corporate event, that kind of thing. So these kind of technologies, because this is what's going to level the playing field for all of us. Imagine the opportunities. If you would have told me a year ago that I would have companies in Nigeria, Rwanda, and South Africa a year ago, I wouldn't have believed it because I wouldn't have known how to find those AI and quantum companies. But the world has changed. So the cities that had thought that they were the most advanced, the New Yorks, the San Franciscos, the Los Angeles, the Londons, the Mumbai, they understand that they have major shortcomings. So on one side, we've got the physical health of the people. On the other side, we have to look at the mental health of the people. Because, there was a book that I read a number of years ago called Man's Search for Meaning. We need to stay interconnected, right? How do we relate to each other during this pandemic? And technologies that have come out, the boom, like Zoom, like the StreamYard, have allowed us to do it. Now the thing, it's like there was an old Indiana Jones movie, Indiana Jones and the Lost Crusade. I remember Harrison Ford was speaking to Sean Connery, and he said to Harrison Ford, choose wisely, right? Or the the Crusader said, choose wisely. And that's where we are today. We need to choose wisely because this is the dawn of a new opportunity where the playing field is a lot more level than it's ever been before.
Thank you very much, Gary. And there it goes, guys. Audience, I hope you guys are getting your insights from the discussions from our panelists. Very, very interesting insights there. What you need to prepare for, factors you need to look at, sectors you need to look at, and all the little things, no matter the continent you are in. I guess some of your issues will be addressed by one or two of our panelists. And as we come to the end of today's discussion, I'd like to encourage our entrepreneurs out there watching us live, where if you're in Asia, Africa, Europe, and you have that stunning idea that you think needs exposure, needs some form of support, you can reach out to the LaToken team. You can set up a pitching session live, and all these great gentlemen here will be here to view your project or your idea and comment or give you reasonable feedback. Also, if you're watching us live and you have a question, you have an insight to share, please feel free to drop a comment just below the comment button or the chat button. We will see it live and give you an instant feedback. So, guys, we come to the very tail end, and I'd like to or I'd like to hear your takeaways. Generally, cities of the future, Kweku, Africa, and Ghana. And what are your hopes? Do you see cities adopting the right approach, or would they adopt a shortcut, which is not sustainable? You know Africa, you know the things that are endemic in Africa, corruption, education and all that. What do you think 10 years from now, will Africa be ready or on its way to being ready to have cities of the future?
Yeah, no, I think it'll have to do with leadership. So I think of Dubai, I think of Singapore. When I think of those two nations, I think of leadership, and similarly with Rwanda, which is a great example of city planning as well, where it's one of the cleanest, one of the safest places in the world is Kigali. I think in Ghana, in Nigeria, where sort of I do a lot of my work as well, it's coming up, and I see a lot more, a lot of leadership as well in the private sector as well. As I mentioned, developers really just buying large swaths of land and then developing sort of those areas into more green, let's say a bit more smart as well, cities as well. Basically building out these planned cities at the level where individuals from anywhere would be happy to live there. And so I think the governments are sort of assisting in some of this. But what I found is that perhaps the leadership in some places will need to come from the private sector, and that there will need to be a lot more developmental capital out there, a lot more in the same way venture capital in a way for the infrastructure side. I work in that space a little bit as well, and what I find is that there are endless opportunities to build infrastructure, and there's an endless amount of money to fund some of these projects. But what is not out there is a developmental capital. The feasibility studies, environmental impact. Some of these elements are required to understand whether or not a project is viable. So I find that it'll have to do with leadership. It'll have to do with folks, sort of either coming back with their expertise or those on the ground, whether in private or public sector, understanding that there needs to be a lot of hard work that needs to be done to get it to the level where really we're all sitting in we're sitting in a room, sitting in a space, and then understanding what is happening at every level through sort of data, through AI, and sort of an more organized approach to building out stuff.
Thank you very much, Kweku. Excellent insights. And I know what you mean when you say leadership is key, and leadership has to come from the private sector. Obviously, I guess that's the best solution to accelerate our progress. And just like Dr. Shrikant said, infrastructure needs to be worked on significantly, both physical infrastructure and digital infrastructure. Now, I hope that in those entrepreneurs, businessmen watching this will understand their roles and take more active participation in building that city of the future. Dr. Srikant, you have said a lot about your belief in building infrastructure, creating jobs, and all that. 5, 10 years from now, Dr. Srikant, where do you see India, Asia? Where do you see them in their quest to build capacity in cities of the future?
See, I kind of gave up predictive analytics after COVID because I realized that it's such a volatile world. It made much more volatile in the current pandemic. So I kind of realized that if I give a blueprint for the next 10 years, or I predict where India would be 10 years from now, it would be at best a shoot in the dark. So from a plan standpoint, what I can categorically state is that India has the vision of being smart, being sustainable, at the same time fostering innovation. So cities, you will find there are no cities, towns, and villages. You will find tier one cities, tier two cities, and tier three cities. So I think that is the aim of the government, and that has been the aim of the government of any developing nation, so to speak. And they will try to fit every village or every town into that particular bracket. And of course, the question of where India would stand, would we have flying saucers and people traveling in air, so to speak, instead of on land? I don't think so. That is too far fetched a dream, so to speak. So to me, India is still an emerging economy. So in 2030, we would still most likely be figuring out what we are trying to figure out right now. I mean, I may not be politically correct over here, but I think that's the best answer that I could give at this particular moment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srikant. And whether you like it or not, you gave a perfect answer because you mentioned three things. India is going to be attempt to be smart, sustainable, and innovative. And entrepreneurs, businesses out there can take advantage of these three key words and be smart, build sustainable projects, and build innovative projects to take India forward to that smart level. That's a city of the future, so to say. So, yeah, that's a pretty decent prediction, knowing fully well that the government is also supporting innovation, sustainability, and smart cities. So, I guess in the next 10 years, we should be looking forward to more smart and innovative projects. So, next, Fabio, 5, 10 years from now, let's say 10 years from now, Europe is going to be right now they're at the center of the pandemic and recovering from the pandemic. 10 years from now, what do you think will have been developed in the smart city or the city of the future? Sorry.
But you see, cities used to grow because they were in a physical location with a particular amenity. Typically, it was a river, or a coast which was very favorable to build a port, or because it was a place, a crossroad of many commercial routes, or sometimes because there was a cathedral or some sort of holy shrine. So cities, the reason why city exists is that they provide something unique that other places, other locations don't provide. With the pandemic, there will be a rethinking of the of the benefits of the urban area. Because as I said before, if some of the benefits of living together, living close by, are weakening, people will tend to spread around, not to concentrate in a densely populated area. So I think that in the next 10 years, we will have the Zoomification, if you wish, of economic activities, which by which I mean that people will not need to meet in person, be physically in the same place. So the cities that will benefit more from this process are the cities with a better climate, with better cultural institutions, with a more beautiful nature around. And the cities that have thrived so far, for example, London and New York, which are very congested, where life is not pleasant because you have to fight to get into the metro or the subway, because catching a taxi when it rains becomes an ordeal, will tend to lose ground. So I think that over the next 10 years, we will see a rebirth of the medium-sized cities in beautiful location, for example, near mountains or near the seaside, and an exodus from the big metropolitan areas, which have been the dominant feature of the 20th century.
You're on mute, Nathaniel.
Okay, sorry. Awesome insight, Fabio. I think I'd like to take a quote that Fabio said. In 10 years from now, cities will have a whole different definition, from the geographically centered locations to another thing entirely. And like you said, it's going to be based on more of digital services, other services that can be offered without restriction to physical locations. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I've been painting a picture in my head while we were talking, and it looked like something in one of those futuristic novels I used to read. But I mean, it will be exciting to see that happen. Or not happen, but I pretty much think it will happen. Gary, next to you, your final words. 10 years from now, cities of the future. We might not have flying saucers, but what will we have?
Yeah. Well, who knows about the flying saucers, right?
Well, I have my thoughts on that, so I don't want to share that.
Oh, you listen, we didn't think 2 years ago we'd have the pandemic, did we?
No, certainly not. Certainly not.
Anyhow, as Fabio said, the Zoomification, right? The digitalization.
Yeah.
The digitalization of our lives and the changes that have taken place are just incredible. I remember 5.5 years ago when I was one of the early Zoom users, and people would laugh at me when I sent out links. I had got it from the actual VCs that funded Zoom, Eric, who's the founder. And they would laugh. They say, "Oh, I use Skype. Why would I ever use Zoom?" Now the situation, Zoom's like Xerox.
Exactly.
About it. But at the same time, we've got challenges. The population of planet Earth is 8.1 billion. By the end of the century, it's going to be a little over 13 billion. So we've got to make a whole lot more to be able to have people space. We've got to make our cities' infrastructure more sustainable, optimized. And there are a lot of things coming out. I mean, look at everything from the increases in speed to the web, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and smart cities. I had an event. I had the top person at Intel on smart cities, Samir Sharma. I mean, think about it. Our cities are so antiquated. The average traffic light in a city is only updated every 8 years. Why isn't it updated on a real-time basis based on traffic flow, right? And so the good news is we've learned some valuable lessons during this pandemic. We've learned that we are vulnerable. We've learned that, as we've developed some of the fastest computers in the world, quantum computers that are 100 million times faster than a supercomputer. Yet at the same time, we couldn't get a roll of toilet paper. Now, what's wrong with that picture? We're sending people to Mars. We're sending probes to Mars, and the toilet paper is a big problem. So we understand that our supply chain has been disrupted, and we need to have more public-private cooperation. And the good news is we understand it now. So now we can make a dent in the universe. So in terms of where we are, I'm very bullish about the future. I'm very, very bullish about AI because AI is the new electricity. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning will be involved in many of the technologies that we have in front of us. Quantum computers, which are coming, the rise of quantum computers to be able to process things at an incredible rate. So imagine something would take 10,000 years in a supercomputer can be done in 200 seconds on a quantum computer, that kind of scale. And that's not a fast quantum computer. So the world is in front of us. We are reacting accordingly. Cities were originally set up to be able to, you have people packed in, densely populated. Now we understand we need to space and do things a bit better. So the good news is we've started to respond. The digital transformation's upon us, and I'm bullish. So, people can reach me, Gary Fowler, on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm happy to talk to them. Check out my shows. I have incredible guests every week, and we talk about topics that make a dent in the universe.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much, Gary. Thank you very much, Fabio. Dr. Shrikant, thank you very much. Kweku, thank you very much. All our panelists can be found on LinkedIn. If you search for them on LinkedIn, you can find them there, add them up, connect with them. But if you're interested in pitching, if you're interested in sharing your idea, you get in touch with me or the LaToken team and schedule a pitching session. Today's discussion has been very insightful and interesting. And you can go back on our YouTube channel to watch this program, this edition over again. And we look forward to seeing you on the next edition, maybe in a few hours' time, where we deal with another topic, trending topic, useful topic. And until then, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, our panelists, and hope to see you guys very soon again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, yeah.